Good morning, everyone. Welcome to this webinar on AI in mental healthcare. My name is Miguel Eduardo Gil, and I'm the Chief Data Officer at Minddistrict. You can find my email address also on the slides, but it will appear later as well. Today, we were going to talk, as I subtitled it, a hype-free approach as of November 2023. And that is because things that 6 months away, 6 months in the past, looked impossible, they are suddenly possible today. And things that we think will be possible 6 months from now may not materialize until 20 years from now. So it's all a very fluid world that we are working on when we talk about AI. What we're going to discuss today is what is AI, the AI conundrum. We're going to be discussing at length about how we can fight against the hype in AI. We're going to touch upon data quality. That is one of the keystones on which we are going to be building AI. And then we are going to be trying to figure out how to get people to embrace AI solutions. So what is AI? There's lots of definitions. This is the one that we're going to use today. AI stands for artificial intelligence, which refers to machines or programs that are designed to perform tasks that usually require human intelligence. This includes things like understanding natural language, recognizing images, solving problems, making decisions, or, for example, making the images that you are seeing now in this presentation. They are all, most of all, are AI generated. Or, for example, when you now go on YouTube and you get closed captions for your videos, those are also AI generated. The funny thing with AI is that it's the second best way to solve any problem. And this funny adage, it was already used 25 years ago when I was in university, and one professor told us exactly this. And we say that it's second best because often there are better ways to solve a problem, there are better solutions, better approaches, but we may not know them yet, or we may not have found them. So sometimes second best is good enough, but it also means that there may not be the most efficient ways to tackle problems. Moving on to the AI conundrum, and it's a conundrum because there's lots of factors that affect how we think and talk about AI. All of them are important. We will not be discussing at length of all of them today. But I want to point a few of them for the ones that are not necessarily familiar with these ideas. If we touch on ethics and safety related to AI, what we care about is that we maintain bias and fairness in our models and algorithms. The last thing that we want is to automate a process, make it work at scale, and that process perpetuates the bias and unfairness that exists in society today. An example of AI gone wrong is, if you're Dutch, you're familiar with the toeslagenschandaal. It's a problem that happened in a part of the Dutch government where there were some subsidies that were allocated, but the people that received them were subject to additional scrutiny depending on what their family names were and whether those were traditionally Dutch or not. Another very important factor with ethics and safety in AI is what we will call transparency and explainability. It's very important that whenever we build an AI solution, we are able to explain what data came into building that solution, but also explain what the output of that model is. So if we decide to take an action or recommend a course of action, it's important that the person that is looking at that output is able to understand why it came to that conclusion. Privacy, I think it goes without saying, we are all very focused on maintaining the privacy of our users. It's a cornerstone that builds everything that we do at Minddistrict. And then we have the Hippocratic Oath, do no harm. We really believe that if we are building new solutions, we should make sure that they are not harming. They are always in the best interest of the end user. So ethics and safety have been a very hot topic. They have been heavily debated in AI circles and broadly in society for the last couple of years. And I don't want to go any more into that. There's lots of very interesting people and smart people that are working on those topics. So we will let them make decisions and we will figure out how to apply them in our cases. The next part of this conundrum is legislation. So we have GDPR that has been with us for 5-6 years. Then we have that says or puts limits to what kind of information can be used, but also what kind of processing can be done and how we inform users about that. There's the MDR, the medical device regulation, that will decide what kind of products can come to the market in a medical setting. And there's the AI Act, that is a new legislation package that the EU is working on, and that will also define under which sectors and which conditions AI can be put into practice. The next points with legislation, politics, and business interest is where things are getting muddled. And that's where, for example, you may hear lots of news nowadays where there's the AI doomers that say AI can destroy the world and we should restrict it and legislate it. There's lots of intelligent and smart people involved in those discussions. Suffice to say that there's scientists involved, there's politics involved, geopolitics involved, so that each of the different parts of the world don't lose the AI race. And there's also business interest by big players trying to play a game of regulatory capture by enacting new legislation. And under those kind of conversations, you can put the latest executive order from the US on AI restrictions, the AI summit that happened in the UK recently, and all the AI legislation and conversations that are happening in the EU and China. And last but not least, we have hype. Everyone has an opinion about AI. Everyone is claiming wild things about AI. In that sense, it feels a bit like a Rorschach test, where everyone is projecting their wishes and fears, and they just use AI as the outlet place to talk about it. Because we always talk about AI and safety and have negative news about it, I wanted to bring this little piece of news. It's a self-driving car. It's a Waymo taxi. And there's an insurance company that was involved in doing a study with those cars. The important thing to retain is they looked, as an insurance company, to the claims, body harm claims, and property damage claims. In both cases, the self-driving car performed way better than human-driven cars. So there are ways to make AI safe. There's ways to bring AI systems in a safe manner in our world. We just need to work really hard and be careful at that. And related to this, fear of the technology is not new. So here you have some newspaper clippings of technologies that nowadays look pretty common for us, but that back in the day were cause for panic or worries. On the left side, we have people worried about elevators because there were people that were getting sick of being in elevators. We had radio that was blamed for causing storms, or even the ever popular radio is threatening culture. And we have the same kind of panics nowadays with it was TV, then it was cinema, then it was video games, now it's social media. It's not that all fears are unfounded, but they are normally blown out of proportion out of fear. We have other examples like horse carriages and automobiles. And the one that I was not expecting was the one on the right. It's about hydroelectric power, and as it being a bad thing. So it goes to show that things that we have completely normalized and we see as net positives in our society, at some point they were not always appreciated by everyone. If we look at the AI hype, and if you don't recognize this chart, it's the Gartner adoption chart for new technologies. It starts with a technology trigger. And then as more people start to see about and hear about it, there's a peak of inflated expectations. There's a little arrow. The world is here. That's where we are now with AI. And the sad thing after the peak of inflated expectations is that you rapidly go to the trough of delusionment when you realize that all the things that you were hoping for AI to solve for you are not actually solved by AI. Normally what happens in those cases is people say this technology is bad. We are just abandoning it. It doesn't live up to the expectations. But there's some crazy people that just keep going. And then we go through the slope of enlightenment and we go to the plateau of productivity, where some of the expectations finally make it to our daily lives. This is our current AI hype cycle. it's not the first time that AI goes through this hype cycle. There's been 3 or 4 previous waves about what AI can do. My goal for today is to try to get you away from that peak of inflated expectations and save you the going to the trough of delusionment. When you will hear me say, I don't think the technology is ready, it's not me being pessimistic or not a believer of AI. It's me trying to be very cautious about not going to the inflated expectations and try to land as close as possible as to where I think the plateau of productivity is going to be. So if we are going to be fighting against the hype, we're going to be talking about 3 things today. Not everything is AI, not everything will pan out, and it's not there to replace the professional. So if we talk about against the hype and not everything is AI, there's lots of models of statistical analysis that have been used forever that now fall under what is called weak AI. And I'm thinking, for example, linear regression for prediction models or k-means clustering. Those are well-known statistical techniques that have been used for many, many years. If you have ever done a regression on Excel, you have been using one of those techniques, and for better or worse, nowadays some people call that AI. So congratulations, you have already used AI according to some people. Me personally, I prefer not to call these things AI because I think it does a disservice and muddles the waters about the complexity of the techniques and how well we understand what they are doing. So we understand regression fairly well. Generative models or things that are able to create text, much less well. So I think they deserve different categories and not be bundled on the same bucket. Not everything will pan out. You need to understand that these are very new technologies that are moving extremely quickly. What was new 2 weeks ago, this week there can be new papers that have been published in research about those discoveries. So it's moving at a pace that we have not seen in technology in a long, long time. So that means that we will be trying things and not everything will work. And that's okay. We need to be comfortable trying things out as long as it's a risk-based approach. So we don't want to change the risk profile of the technologies that we're using. How do we do that? Well, my take, and that's where some people say that I'm too conservative, is I want to stay clear of flaky ideas. So for example, sentiment analysis on very short text. I've seen people doing sentiment analysis on 5 words, 1 sentence. And while you may be able to attach sentiment to that sentence, I would argue that it's not always easy to do so because you're lacking lots of context. And the same sentence in 2 different contexts can mean very different things. So automating that is a bit tricky. If we look, for example, at another flaky idea, is estimating mental state. And I put mental state with lots of quotes because there's not a clear agreement of what mental state means, but even diagnosis from short voice recordings. So you can record a piece of voice, let's say 5 seconds, and people say that you can detect anxiety, you can detect depression, and they will publish papers. While there may be some base to that, I argue that it's not easy to generalize, and I would not use it as a diagnostic tool. Because this can backfire, and because there's high stakes in diagnosing, I would like to stay clear from those things for the time being. And all these ideas ties with my last point. Don't oversell the technology for business gain. Put it bluntly, don't become the next Theranos or Babylon Health. And for the ones that don't know who those companies are, Theranos oversold their claims of being able to detect illnesses and doing diagnostics on 1 drop of blood. There is a documentary now on Netflix which normally tends to indicate that it didn't end well, so there was a bit of fraud. Babylon Health is much more recent. It's a UK company. They oversold their AI capabilities to the point that one of the person that was involved in their compliance department prepared all the documentation and resigned the next day, saying something along the lines of, I don't want to be part of the next Theranos. They announced recently that they are stopping operations of all their AI products. And then we get to the point of, we are not here to replace the professional. And that is something that I hear a lot, like, you will not need professionals anymore. And I want to be very, very clear. We are not at a point that replacing the professional is an option. And personally, I don't think we are at a point that we ever want to replace the professional, because they are the ones that have the expert knowledge. They are the ones that can hold the risk and liability for decisions. They are the ones that have the human contact with the person, so they can read things and they can see things that the machine may not be able to. And then we have this concept of human in the loop. A human in the loop is having a human always involved in the decision making. And there's two models for that. There's centaurs and minotaurs. Let me spend a bit of time explaining those two concepts, because I think they are very valuable to understand how we think about AI, or how do we have productive ways of thinking about AI. The concept of the centaur related to man-machine dates back to when Kasparov, chess grandmaster, played against Deep Blue AI, a computer. And it was the first time that the machine beat the human. And they did that multiple times, and the machine kept winning. So Kasparov decided that they wanted to try something else. It would not be anymore machine versus person, human. It will be a team of a machine plus a human against a machine, or a team of a machine and human against a machine and a human. And they call that combination of a machine and a human a centaur, based on this mythological animal that has the lower half is of a horse and the upper half of a human, trying to symbolize that you get the raw power of the animal, but you still have the rationality and the decision-making, the head of a human. And there's two ways of thinking about centaurs nowadays. If you have ever used something like ChatGPT or Bard from Google, you can imagine that you are a centaur when you're interacting with it. And there's two approaches. One of them is delegate, like, I give you a piece of text, please summarize it for me, and then you get the summary, and then you can go and edit it. That would be like a centaur that delegates the task. There's another one that is the centaur combination, where what happens is co-creation, where you are asking some questions from the side of the human, the machine provides some answers, but asks also questions, and then there's an iterative process by which you are creating something new that would be better than what any of them by separate could do. What we need to be very careful, though, is not to turn machine learning into a minotaur kind of setup, where that's another mythological animal, where what happens is that the head is that of a bull and the body that of a human. That would mean that the decision-making is taken by the animal part, that is basically just blindly brute forcing a solution, and the human is just there kind of going along and accepting it. So when we want to think of AI systems that we want to bring to the market, we are always thinking about centaurs in any of its shapes, whether it's more of a collaborative or delegating tasks or co-creating new things. So now that we have put the hype a bit down, let's figure out what are the problems that we have when we are thinking AI. And for that, there's this other sentence that is commonly used, garbage in, garbage out. And that is because data quality is crucial. If we look at the illustration, I was trying very hard to not have bananas on the left, but the machine didn't allow me not to have bananas. So imagine that the bananas on the left are the garbage input, and then you have garbage output. It can look very fancy, flashy, colorful, but it's still garbage. There's nothing that has a shape or that is useful on the right. So we need to be very careful about the quality of the data that we use in our systems before we bring in AI. That means that there are some domains where bringing in AI is easier. So for example, operations in a company, or capacity forecasting or capacity planning are things for which most companies have lots of information, lots of data, and AI has chances of being able to offer solutions. In the medical domain, the quality of measurements and annotations determine success. And what I mean by that is how do we measure in a medical setting, and annotations refer to what happens with those measurements. What are the doctor's decisions attached to them? What are the outputs? What is the thing that happened afterwards? And we have some domains in which that works really well. For example, radiology and dermatology, we have really good ways of taking pictures, and before it was a plastic that you would put on a screen and then the doctor would interpret it. Nowadays, they mostly do that on a screen in a computer because all the process has been digitized. And that's kind of key in order to build AI systems. And that's why some of the most advanced systems that we see in AI in healthcare are around those fields, radiology, dermatology. Even the ICU, that is a heavily monitorized environment where you can see what the outcome of a given patient is. They have massive data sets from which we can learn. When we get to mental health care, we have a different problem though, and that's a measurement problem. Or let's agree on what are we even measuring? What are mental health care problems? And for that, the tools that we have are not always great. Some markets, people talk about the DSM-5 things, there's ICD codes, but none of those necessarily match with what is happening on the individual person. Fortunately, there's new work happening. For example, what you see on the right is the high-top classification that is trying to replace, or is working on a replacement of the DSM-5. They substitute buckets for dimensions, assuming that people can be having problems in more than one dimension. So it's not that you are in this bucket and all the rest is problematic to describe. No, we have several dimensions, and along those dimensions you can have more severe or less severe symptoms. So that maps better to all the comorbidities that we are seeing in the world. The interesting part of high-top versus the DSM-5 is DSM-5 is created by consensus of some doctors. High-top is based on empirical data that is coming from clinical practice and research. So it has better chances of helping us define and measure. The other problem that we have is when we are measuring in psychology, the quality of the evidence is low. And what we mean by that, well, I was really interested in this poster from a conference. Psychological measures aren't toothbrushes. And it's a very catchy phrase, but that it points out to a very big problem that we have in psychology. People love creating scales. And they create the scales and they run the study. They are used a couple of times and then they are forgotten. That doesn't allow us to create a body of evidence that we can rely on. Many studies have really low n size. When we are thinking about what questionnaires are massively used, there's a handful, 5, 10, that's it. And then the other question is, do we know really what those questionnaires are measuring? Are those measurements useful for the clinical world that we live in? Are those measurements useful for the kind of data that we need when we are doing AI? Another shift that we have in the world of psychology is a shift between nomothetic and ideographic. Nomothetic is when we are studying populations or we look at psychopathology in general. Ideographic focus on the individual. If we want to do personalized care, it's great to see that the population in general has a level of PHQ-9 around here, but it's really not that useful if you see your client being at this level, but not for reasons that are related to what the average in the group means. So we need to go much more personal. And that is something that before was hard, but nowadays with technology, we can start first capturing that data and also doing more things in the ideographic sense. Things are slowly improving, so don't take this as everything is horrible. No, we are actually seeing good progress. Research in academia is also changing. The mentality is slowly changing. So I'm very, very hopeful that we will see improvements in measurements that will also enable us to do better and more safe and solid AI, also in mental health care. The next problem is, how do we get people to use this? So we need to make sure that it offers a significant improvement or time saving, because otherwise we will end up like the people in the picture. You arrive with your round wheels and people will be like, no thanks, we are too busy. We are very happy with our square wheels, without realizing that they are doing something in a suboptimal way. Of course, I don't want this to sound like here comes the engineer telling psychologists that they are doing things wrong. No, this is more an engineer that finds a problem and says, hey, how can we get you to benefit from the improvements that this brings to your practice? We also need to make sure that we build a system that offers suggestions, but leaves people in control of the final decisions. The worst thing that we can get or we can do for ensuring adoption is remove agency from the client or remove agency from the professional. That will only ensure that people will fight it rather than trying to understand whether it works for them. So we need to be very cautious about how we shift the perception of AI. And that's why I started. We don't want to remove the professional. We are not here to take over the jobs. We don't want to remove them the decision capability. We need them to embrace these techniques if we want this to succeed. And the last part is we need to be very transparent about risks. And that is something that I spend a lot of time thinking about, and why some people say you are against AI or we are not moving fast enough. Because I don't believe that we can cowboy these kind of decisions. We need to be very conscious about the risk that we are taking and how can we bring these techniques in a way that doesn't change or shift the risk profile of the product. With that being said, what are we doing now? Well, we are improving measurement possibilities in the Minddistrict platform. You will hear us talk about ROMs, but there's more coming. There's much more coming beyond ROMs. We are improving our ability to describe interventions, because an intervention is not purely a chunk of text. We have colleagues in our catalog team that are spending inordinate amount of time trying to figure out what is the best way to construct an intervention to achieve the goals. And they do research. They are really crafting the interventions with lots of care, and lots of those interventions are built with building blocks, we want to know for each BCT what is the mechanism of action, what is the BCT that we are actually using in which parts of the module. So we are trying to improve our ability to describe that so that we can understand better what works, what doesn't, what works for a given individual, so that we can then use AI to help us design better interventions, but also figure out what intervention has higher chances of success for any given client. And then we want to leverage technology that is seeing broad adoption and application in the market. There is very little benefit from starting from scratch when the measurements are not great yet and when we are lacking some information. So let's try to start where the market is already moving and doing things that professionals are starting to get used to in other areas of their lives. So if you're using Outlook, sometimes you get some options at the bottom to generate quick answers. If you're using Gmail, same story. Gmail is now even pushing it a bit more and allows you to draft a little bit of the email for an answer in case you ask it to. And that's a bit the place where we are also looking towards. So for example, in the Minddistrict platform, you have a client that is doing a module and they have filled in some questions. At some point, the professional has to give feedback. The professionals are busy. The professional then needs to remember everything about the context of that given client, and then they need to put what they know about the client with the feedback and the answers that they gave, and they need to give something meaningful back. What we see is that many professionals default to, great, continue doing what you're doing. What if we could ask an AI system to draft a reply? And in this case, for example, we have Paul. Thanks for opening up about your sleep struggles, how it's affecting your work and personal life. It's great that you're working on trying different techniques, yada, yada. Here's some advice, and there's 3 bullets with advice. If your depressive symptoms are first, don't hesitate to reach out to me or another professional. This was automatically generated by an AI. It doesn't mean we automatically send it to the client as a feedback, but we can show it to the professional and say, hey, here you have this empty box, write whatever you want, or you can use this as a starting point for a draft and then tweak whatever you want and make it your own. We really believe that this has the potential of bringing more of the information in context. We have another example where the client, on top of that, we are passing in some PHQ-9 scores, and we see they are not a bad place, so that they are starting in yoga. The system refers to the yoga user and on actually and ends up with a message. I think this is a pretty decent answer on which a professional could then go on and edit it, rather than face a big box without knowing where to start. And some of you may be thinking, okay, but this is too much text. This is not what the professional may be writing themselves. Then we have this. Your dedication to improving your sleep is impressive. Keep up the good habits, and I'm here if you need extra guidance or support. It's exactly the same message as before, where we just told the AI, just make it very short and conversational. And it doesn't mean we send it directly, once again. This can be a draft that the professional then can make their own. And they can check. They have the agency to decide this is good, this is not good, and they are the ultimate responsible of what goes in that message. That's why it's so important that we behave here like a centaur, where the professional and the machine are working as one together, but the end decision comes from the professional. We don't want a minotaur. We don't want the professional going blindly, yes, draft, okay. That's the place where we don't want to go. So it's all about the challenge of how do we convey this with a proper UX and a proper experience in the platform. I've showed you examples for the professional because these are the things that we are working on now, because the risk profile there is easier to argue. You are showing something that refers to a client, but you're showing it to a professional. So you're not putting it directly in the hands of the client, and the professional hopefully is in a better mental state to decide and not be affected by a prong or a suggestion that might not be good. So they're still in control. Do we want to move these AI systems and put them in the hands of clients? Maybe. And that's where I'm being very cautious, because I think the risk profile changes. But we have also sketched out a system of what could this be. And for that, for example, we have, imagine the following scenario. You are doing a module and suddenly there's a white box where the question is, how are you feeling today? And if you are okay, that's probably a question that might be confronting, but it takes a little bit to answer, but you can answer it. But if you're not okay, or you're having trouble expressing yourselves or your feelings, it can be a bit confronting. It can be difficult to bridge the gap. So then we prototyped a quick system where we say, okay, I'm going to give you 3 words and create sentences to me. And then, for example, we have stress, sleep, and kids. And then it offers 3 suggestions with 3 different scenarios that could be related to those sentences. And then the user can decide, okay, which sentence matches closely or is closest to what I'm feeling. And then you can say, okay, the first sentence, but the sleep problem is actually caused by the kid, because it's a small kid. And then the sentence gets rewritten, bringing that new information in. And then you're like, yeah, I mean, that's it, but I think it's also because I'm alone. And then it rewrites, and then you have something that expresses a bit your feelings in a way that you may have found difficult to start from. This is an approach. We have another example, like tired, sick, and pain. And then you have several things, and then you say, okay, yes, but I think the second one, where it's the combination of feeling constantly tired, blah, blah, blah. And then you say, yeah, but it's long COVID and my joints hurt. And then it edits again, and then say, yes, but there's no solution in sight, or I'm hopeless. And then it edits a bit more, and then, yes, that's good, also despair. And then it edits a bit more. And that output, the last one, could be what we end up putting in the form. So when someone is struggling to convey their feelings or how they are feeling about something, we can think of assistants that can guide you to tease out how you're feeling. Why do I think this is more risky product or risky tool than the one for professionals? This is in the hands of clients. A client might not be in a good mental state. Depending on what answers this is suggesting, it might be putting words in the mouth of the client that they were not theirs to begin with. Or it could be that they are just like, yes, whatever, this is fine. I just need to fill in something. And then we may not be teasing out, or we might be guiding too much the answer. I think there's potential, but we will not be going with this thing in the beginning. But if you have ideas, please share them with us. There may be something, and I'm always happy to exchange ideas and battle test it if needed. So what are we preparing for? As I discussed before, we are working on predictive models based on measurements. For that, we need to improve measurements. That's what we are working on currently. And hopefully with those predictive models, we can make progress on personalization of the treatment. What I was referring in the beginning about how do we adapt the care to the context, or adapt the care to the mood, adapt the care to the progress in the treatment. All those things will come in together, and hopefully we can deliver on them in the coming years. We are getting to the end. For me, the main message is we need to build together. We be very, very careful with the hype. Slow and steady wins the race. It's not about being flashy and having the most wild claim about AI. I don't think healthcare is a sector where we should cowboy solutions, and even less in mental health care. So let's tame a bit the hype and make sure that whatever we bring AI for has a purpose and adds value. We are not here to replace professionals. I don't know how many times I've said it, but I hope the message lands. We really, really need to create centaur teams. We need to get the best of the collaboration between man and machine, or persons and machines. Personalization in mental health care needs better measurements, and we are working on it. And there is room to use AI today without introducing new risks. We just need to be very, very careful and keep those conversations top of mind. And without further ado, if there's any questions, I will be happy to answer them. I see a question coming. Where does Minddistrict see itself in the total IT landscape? Will there be an AI service that be fed by multiple systems, or will you stick to your own product? It's an interesting question. For now, I can only do things with the data that I have access to. So I have to think of places where AI can benefit our users with the information that we have in our systems. There's not much that I can think outside of that. As part of the total IT landscape, there's lots of initiatives on how do we share data. So for example, in the Netherlands, we have things like koppeltaal, but there's more and more initiatives in the market about how do we share healthcare data from different providers. At some point, there will be AI systems that will be plugging or be part of that IT network of medical information that may add added value services on top of that. But I don't think we are there yet because there's still lots of discussion going on how do we share data, who get access to what, and how do you create those services. We are following the developments in this area. For example, in the Netherlands, we are part of the Dutch AI coalition, where we have lots of parties from government institutions to legislator, regulatory bodies. We have suppliers like us, we have hospitals, we have patient organizations. Everyone is there, and we are trying to align our AI efforts. So I don't think being an island is the solution, but things are too fuzzy right now to think beyond that in practical terms. There's another question. It would be great if Minddistrict can suggest the right content, modules based on patient information. What do you think about that? Yes, that's part of the story when I was referring to how do we personalize healthcare? How do we personalize what is the next step in the treatment? For that, the patient information is a very broad thing. The data points that people think most of is gender, age, and I don't want to do demographics for now. For me, it's more important information that allows us to assess how that person is mentally. And that's why our investment in measurements. if we can figure out, okay, this person is not doing okay, they have suicidal ideation, and that is tied to, I don't know, lack of sleep. And we can do things where we are suggesting to the professional, not to the client, to the professional, what could be the next best step in the content to be given. But then it's always up to the professional to decide if that's still the best course of action. More questions. I need to read it. Yes. How do we make sure that privacy of the users is guaranteed when bringing these AI solutions? So as I was saying, privacy is very, very important to us. We have lots of the information is segregated, and we are not able to work with it directly. For these AI systems, there's different dimensions to privacy. Are we talking privacy about making sure that an AI system doesn't learn from this kind of data? Well, we can do that or by signing contracts that prohibit that from happening if the data is sent to a third party or run in the cloud. There's another part that is more related or tied to privacy, but related to how do we achieve privacy. That is, for example, data minimization. I don't necessarily need to send lots of personal information to an AI system for it to be useful. So, for example, I don't need to send any identifiers. I don't need to send any PII in the information that I send. So, for example, if imagine in our feedback example for the professional, there was something that was hateful something, but it could be that the client themselves have given in their feedback, I have a problem with Mary because blah, 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 blah. Some of the things that we are working on is how do we mask that information in such a way that the information that we send actually to the AI system doesn't contain that. So in this case, we could be sending, I have a problem with user 2, blah, 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 blah. And then when we get back the answer, what we do is we replace back those tags. So yes, I think privacy, it's a very important topic. There's techniques and ways that we can actually do things about it. If you have any concerns, please reach out to either your account manager, the info box, or myself. What do you expect to see in 5 years? ChatGPT as your psychiatrist? Maybe. I don't know what's going to happen 6 months from now, so 5 years away, I'm not qualified to give an answer. What I think we are going to be seeing is systems that will blur more and more the lines of what is perceivable as generated by a machine and what is not. I think we are almost there. The progress that I see that will happen is that we will be able to add better guardrails. So right now, when you think of ChatGPT, the best way to think of it is like a motivated junior. You ask something and it will give an answer. It's up to you to judge if that is the right answer, if it's applicable in your use case. What I think we will see happening, I don't know, 5 years from now, but little by little, gradually, we will see that there will be new ways of constraining what those answers are. We can guide them better. A regular problem in eHealth is to make time and room to guide this on a good manner. I'm worried that AI provides possibility to do eHealth on more automatic and professionals more on distance. Does MD see this as a risk I'm worried about? Yes, that's a risk. It's something that is a bit out of our hands. When I think about healthcare, I see a big mismatch between the demand. So we have more and more people that are not okay and that need care, and the number of professionals doesn't grow in the same manner. So even if we wanted to say we need to guarantee a certain amount of time dedicated exclusively from the professional to the client, that's a system that is not sustainable. Unless we find solutions to scale this up, and at some point it becomes an industrialization problem, we are going to end up in a system where there will be a few that can afford care and a lot that will not get any care. So that's why I think AI, what can do is it can help provide better care for everyone by detecting what are the things that can be done more on an automated base, and what things really need the touch from the personal contact with a professional. So I don't think I see it as a risk in the sense of we will be delivering worse care or we will not be having enough contact time between the professional and the client. I think we will, or what I hope, is that we will enable better care, trying to figure out who needs more attention, who can benefit from getting really the face-to-face time, and who can simply follow the healthcare. There's a paper published, I don't remember now the name, but the gist of it was about 30% of the people will not, or X% of the people, I don't remember the percentages, so the percentage of the people will not get better almost no matter what we do. There's a big chunk of the population that can get quite far on their own following eHealth with minimal contact. And there's another part of the population that only improve if there is this direct contact. So for me, bringing AI is about realizing that big group in the middle. How can we make sure that they get the best care possible? And with that, I think there's no more questions. I want to thank you all for joining us today. It was a pleasure to share all these ideas on AI. And if you have more questions, please contact your account managers. Thank you.